Hi everyone, good afternoon, and thank you for joining the 12th session of the Podium Tech Talk series organized by Asiata Digital Labs. Explore the latest trends in the worlds of technology and digital transformation with our series of Tech Talks, and to hear from our very own tech experts and the services we offer at ADL. For today's session, we focus on the topic of RPA and how businesses can apply technology to automate their business processes. Today's topic will be focusing merely on revolutionizing business with the power of RPA. For today's session, we've got two industry experts. Firstly, we have Aravinda Samarasinghe, who's a senior software engineer at ADL with over 6 years of experience in the software industry. Aravinda is a Huawei certified ICT associate and a Google Cloud certified professional cloud architect as well. Aravinda holds a BSc degree from the University of Sri Jayawardenepura as well. And your second speaker for today is Malsha Mayadunne. She's an associate BA lead from at ADL. Malsha is also a certified Scrum product owner and a process maker certified advanced architect. Malsha holds a diploma in software engineering from the National Institute of Business Management, a BSc in physical science with a computer science special from the University of Sri Jayawardenepura, and an MBA in information technology specializing in business analytics from the University of Murray. So you guys are in good hands today, this afternoon. I'll now hand over the session to Aravinda and Malsha, who will be focusing on the key topic of revolutionizing business with the power of RPA. Guys, over to you.
All right. Thanks, Nitish. Hi, everyone. I hope you can see my screen.
Yeah, all good. Can see.
Right. Okay. Let me just. All right. Let's get right into it. So today we are talking about revolutionizing business with the power of RPA. So without further ado, let's start the session. And so before going anywhere further, let's just look at what RPA is to those who are new to the trends or new to the topic entirely. So RPA or robotic process automation is a software-based solution that can automate rule-based business processes that involve routine tasks, rule-based tasks, and structured data. And these processes should usually have a very deterministic outcome. That means there's a clear set of input and a clear set of rules and logics to follow to get a certain outcome. So that's what RPA is. So RPA are software robots or software bots that can follow the paths of an human employee and automate business processes. All right. So why is RPA such a trendy word? Even though it was the it word a couple of years back, why is it still trending? So RPA is still trending, mostly because it can be used throughout the world in different regions and in different market segments, whether it's finance, whether it's IT, whether it's HR, RPA can be implemented everywhere. And because of the global pandemic that we just came through, RPA actually was a recession-proof method for business continuity. So because all of us were stuck at home, so all the critical and sensitive processes that businesses have that needs to be run or needs to be executed for the business to run smoothly given the situation was done mostly thanks to RPA in a lot of the small, medium, as well as large enterprises. And it is because of that in 2021, RPA market size value was actually 1.8 billion USD, and it increased to 2.3 billion in 2022, and it is expected to reach a 2.9 billion in 2023. And with this same accelerated growth rate, it is expected to reach 30.8 billion USD in 2030. So you can imagine the market that RPA have or the interest that RPA has in the global as well in any of the regions and markets. So as you can see here, so Asia Pacific region where we are based on actually has the highest regional growth rate for RPA, and European and North American region then coming in the mid growth rate, and of course the African and the South American region coming in as a low. So these are data as of the last year. So it is actually growing and it is changing day by day. I mean, we are working in an industry that changes on a daily basis, and RPA is like that too. So it what started off as a trend or a it word in the industry have now accelerated to what we are now, and it is expected to accelerate even further, which we'll be discussing throughout this session today as well. So we've talked about why RPA is important. Like we've talked about what RPA is and why is it still trending. Now, why should a business or an organization go towards automating? Why should you, as an organization, automate? So one of the first things that automation brings about is the highest accuracy level. So if you give a certain set of rules to follow, a certain set of logics to follow, you can be sure that when you automate something, the bot solution or the RPA solution will work with the highest accuracy as possible with the given logics. And it also makes sure to increase the productivity of an organization as well. Now, if you apply a bot to a repetitive, tedious task that a human employee is doing, and then that employee can actually be utilized for doing some other process that involves strategic thinking or decision making or even emotional intelligence, where those things are needed in an organization, right? So that actually increases the productivity because the tasks that needs to be done, but that are so tedious and repetitive to be done, will be done by a machine, while the employees can focus on much better things. That actually works for the employee morale as well. Because imagine if you're stuck on a job, you're doing the same repetitive thing over and over again. That means your morale rate goes way down. Now, if that process that you have or you hate to do, but is really important to do, is automated, and you can you can use your brains and you can use your thoughts towards a process that has a better impact on the organization, that has a more higher impact on a strategic level, that makes your moral higher. So that actually goes hand in hand as well. And then, of course, consistency and reliability. Why we say consistency and reliability go hand in hand is because now when you build a bot, when we develop a bot, once you develop it and it's the same thing done over and over again, right? So unlike a human, the bots don't get tired. Unlike the humans, it can actually work near 24/7 as well, especially during a critical, if you're automating a critical business process. And this consistency and the reliability that the RPA solutions provide can actually help organizations overcome many tedious problems that they may have right now. And of course, RPA is a non-invasive technology. What we mean by non-invasive technology is if you're an organization that have many different systems in place, and of course, many enterprises these days do have different systems. You have an HR systems, you have ERP systems for your work, you have other finance systems if it is needed. So all these systems usually work independently. Now, what RPA does is they work on top of these systems. Because they work on top of these systems, you don't have to have any changes or redevelopments done to these existing systems as well, because RPA works on top of it, just like a human employee would do. It's minimum innovations made to your existing systems. It most likely can actually work on top of legacy systems as well, even if you don't have support from your service provider or solution provider for that system. And of course, compliance. Working in the IT industry, when you're working in an organization, there are many regulations or legal compliances that you have to adhere to. For example, if you're working in a fintech domain and there are so many regulations that you have to work. For example, now we are operating in Sri Lanka. So if you're working in Sri Lanka and you're working in a fintech domain, then you have to adhere to the central bank, the guidance or the regulations provided by the Central Bank of Sri Lanka. Similar to that, whatever the region you may operate in, whatever the domain you may operate in, there are regulatory compliances that you have to stick by. And similar to that, there are data privacy compliances. And if you're working in the health domain, there are HIPAA, there's the HIPAA regulation that you have to be in compliance of. Now, all these regulations means there are certain processes that are in place to make sure that you are actually being in compliance of these regulations. Now, where RPA comes into play is there are certain aspects of these regulations that you have that are repetitive or that are tedious. Like it can be simple as archiving certain data. It can be simple as removing the data after it's used, or it can be to make sure that certain reconciliations are done and you pass the information from one place to another without modifications. So all of these things actually can be done via automations as well. So you don't have to specifically train employees. You don't have to train a new employee when an employee resigns or moves away. An RPA solution can actually make sure you are in compliance of these regulation tasks as well. And the last but not the least reason why automation is important is because it actually brings a low technology barrier to the business users. Now, if you're an employee who are not actually tech savvy or an IT expert, but you still want some of the processes that you have to be automated, the RPA solution provider will do that for you. Why it is a low technology barrier is how the RPA processes are triggered or how it is initiated can be as easy as sending an email or clicking a button or sending an SMS. And then the outputs from RPA will be similar to an output that an employee would do. So it can be an email sent to you. It can be that they are doing some work and putting those reports into a shared location, or it can be filling a dashboard similar to that. So it's a low technology barrier for the users in the sense of using RPA or working hand in hand with RPA. And besides these non-financial reasons as to why it is important, another reason is the financial aspect of it. When you automate certain things, there are so many financial benefits that a company or an organization would have as well. One such thing, now, based on, we are an RPA solution provider as well. So based on a success story that we have with our clients that we have worked with, we've managed to save per one particular client more than 50 million LKR per annum. And we've already also managed to save them more than 19,000 man hours per annum. And all that is done with about 50,000 RPA process requests coming in for the solution framework as a whole. So that's, and all that is around 40 to 50 business processes. So this is like a small example of a success story and small example of financial benefits and non-financial benefits. And there are many benefits when it comes to RPA. It depends on how you look at it. It depends on what you are trying to achieve as an organization or as an employee as well. Now that we know why automate, now let's just look at where RPA can be implemented. So RPA, so few examples where RPA can be implemented is automation of reports. It can automate complex calculations and of course data migrations and maintenance related tasks. And as I explained in the previous slides as well, reducing gaps between systems is one of the biggest reasons that RPA was actually hyped up, because you can move things from system A to system B without doing changes to both those systems, because RPA is a low invasive, non-invasive technology. And of course, RPA can be used for quality assurance to make sure to do validations and cross-checkings of data and information. And it can be used in real-time monitoring of certain things. It can be transactions, fraud alerts, and it can be used mixed with alerts and dashboards to make sure that mitigation, like if there is a monitoring or tracking activity done, if there are mitigation plans to be initiated, those things can be done as well. And of course, as I've explained before, compliance maintenance can also be done via RPA. And RPA can, again, be implemented anywhere in any market. So it can be customer service domain, it can be telecommunications, finance, business operations, logistics, or even human resources. So it can work in any domain as long as you're working on top of the digital world. Now, when you're automating, one of the things that we've talked about and we've seen when we're working with automation is that, yes, as long as you're working in the digital world, almost everything can be automated, no problem. But should it actually be automated just because it is feasible to be automated? So when we are working with automation and when we're working with organizations or people who needs automation, few things that we should look at is to make sure that these processes, automating such processes, will it bring a good opportunity for your company? So one is these processes should have a high transaction volume. And it is good if they are frequent. Like the more frequent they are, the more volume they have. And if it includes more manual work, then it's a very good automation opportunity, because that means it's a tedious process. And these digital processes should have a standard readable electronic input type. Now, when there are business processes, yes, I mean, PDFs, Words, Excel files, those are easy enough. But if you're working with, let's say, invoices and there's a handwritten ones, those are a bit harder to work with, because now when you're writing also, it's not always English based on the region that you operate in. So having a standard readable electronic input type is a good, makes a good automation opportunity. And when you're automating things, it has to, we have to make sure that the processes that we are trying to automate are standardized, which means they're documented and predictable. When we say documented, it doesn't necessarily have to be written somewhere, but it has to be standard enough that even if it is 4 people telling us this is the process, it should actually have it should actually be the same, or actually be most likely similar. And these processes should be less prone to short-term changes. Now, in the business world, we understand that business processes can change. I mean, nothing stays the same forever. But when it comes to automation, the short-term changes should be minimal, because otherwise when we let's say we automate something, we put it to live and you start using it, and then something changes and you have to redevelop the whole thing. So it's okay for changes to come, but as long as they're not short-term changes. And of course, as the definition itself said, these should be rule-based processes with standardized and predictive rules. And the number of variation scenarios should always be low. Why we say that is, there are complicated business processes with hundreds and thousands of scenarios as well. But the higher the number of scenarios are, the higher it is for us to actually test it out. The harder it is for actually for us to make sure that everything is working according as it should be. And also harder it is for the business user to give us the requirement as well, because if there are so many variation scenarios, that means there's a chance that these actual business users have not come across these scenarios also, and if they are new, they might not have come across these scenarios as well. So when it's a low number of variation scenarios, it's better. But if a process actually ticks all the other boxes but have a higher number of variation scenarios, that is also fine. That is a chance. I mean, we can of course look at it and automate it as well. And with all that is said and done, because you're running a business, you have to make sure there's a return on investment, because bringing in an RPA solution means there is a cost involved. Whether it's development, deployment, and maintenance, there is always a cost involved when you're bringing in a new technology. So we have to make sure that when you're automating certain business processes, that it actually adds value to the company and brings in that return on investment. It doesn't always have to be a financial return. It can be non-financial as well. But as long as it brings in that ROI, it should be good to go. And then let's just look at when we're all this is, let's say you have good automation opportunities, now you are invested in this. So when we are trying to bring RPA into an organization, there are certain aspects that you have to look at. One such aspect is the individual impact that RPA solution would bring. So first thing, when you hear automation and when you hear the word robotics, you get that automation anxiety. People get that. It's human nature, because maybe because of all the sci-fi movies we watched, or it may be because of the robo uprising that you've all heard of this, again, due to the sci-fi movies. But this automation anxiety comes into play. So that the major reason is the fear of job security. So the first thing you hear, let's say I'm doing something and they're trying to automate the process that I'm doing, the task that I'm doing, then I'll be thinking, okay, they're trying to replace me with a bot. They're trying to, kick me out of the company. And it actually comes because of this brand perception that RPA or robotics in general have about, replacing humans. But what and management point of view or an organization point of view that can be done to mitigate that anxiety that people get, or the fear that they get when they hear the word RPA, is one is to make sure that there are actual role changes happening. When you're automating the task that this person is doing, of course, this person is skilled enough to do something else that are not so tedious and repetitive and involves a lot of manual work. So you give them that role changes, and then and of course, you actually train them to understand the impact that RPA brings, trainings on RPA to make sure they understand why it's important for them as a human employees to work hand in hand with an virtual employee as well. And then, of course, we have to redefine the measures of success. So it's not always going to be the same KPIs or same ways that the success rates are measured for these employees. When automations are introduced, it's definitely going to change. And you have to actually introduce it to them in a way that they understand. Again, it comes with how you do the trainings and how you introduce it to the employees, and brings about a new approach to the change that is coming to their organization. And from the individual aspect, the other thing that a company would have is an organizational point of view aspect as well. So here you have to consider the impact on the strategic narrative. So just because RPA is the trending word, or because RPA, everybody else is implementing RPA in an organization, should not come into this if it is not part of their strategic narrative. Because if the strategic decisions or the strategic drive is going somewhere into this way, and RPA initiatives does not play into this, then it's not going to be successful. And the other thing is, you have to have these benefit realizations done in a timely manner. That means if there is an ROI, is there an ROI when we are doing this? What is the benefit that comes when you are doing this? So that realization has to be done by the organization, which is where, like, when you hear the word RPA and you look into the RPA, there's something called the COE coming to play, Center of Excellence for RPA. And we'll talk about that in a bit as well. So when you're introducing RPA, another thing is redesigning the structures and KPIs and roles to make sure that you match the changes that these employees will be facing. And then you have to increase the digital competencies and the capabilities of employees as well, because otherwise the resistance to this change or the resistance to automation will be actually increasing. And with this increasing digital capabilities and competencies, you have to increase the digital leadership as well. Because if you're governing this through a center of excellence, an RPA center of excellence, it has to be from a team that understands RPA and a team that knows RPA well. So increasing that digital leadership is really important to make sure the RPA initiative is successful. And as an organizational, and then from the management perspective, another thing that it's really important is how you plan the integrated workforce. Because the moment you start introducing RPA, that means you're going to have virtual employees in the sense that it's bots, and then you have human employees as well. So when you have these virtual versus human employees, you have to make sure this integration is smooth, and the both types of employees can actually work well together. So integrated workforce planning is really important. And with all that is done, you have to make sure your culture is actually a future focused culture. You're not living in the legacy era. You're making sure that as an organization, you're moving towards future with the future trends, but also looking at it from a human aspect, as we can call it, because the fears that individually employees may have is really valid, because the moment these new things are introduced, the fear that you get or the anxiety that these employees will actually get is a really valid thing to have. So it's an organization's responsibility to make sure they understand why this initiative is being done, and how it impacts the organization and how it impacts them, and how you're going to use their skills and knowledge in a way better than what they were being used in the organization before the RPA initiative. So all these things, making sure that everything is planned properly, is really important when you're introducing an RPA initiative to an organization. Now, so after let's say you get the impact done, you understand, and you start the automation initiative. One thing that we've noticed is, if you read about it, and is that the big bang start, the hype about automation and everything, you start it, and then after a while it goes down. The initiatives are not always as successful as it should be. And it's most likely because there are certain automation mismanagement that can happen from an organization point of view. So one such thing is failure to appreciate and anticipate the initial learning curve. Because when you're introducing a new technology, whether it's RPO or anything else, actually, when you're introducing something new, then there is a learning curve. Sometimes it's actually higher than you can plan. Because we've noticed is that when you introduce something, then sometimes management can be surprised to think that, okay, the consultants or the experts that you brought in to teach and to start the journey are still here after about 2-3 years. That can be because you didn't appreciate or anticipate the initial learning curve that automation will actually have. And then another reason is failure to tackle the deficiencies or the fragmentations of existing business processes. Now, you can always increase the efficiency of a process by automating. But if you increase the efficiency of a process that is not good, then there's no point of it, right? So you have to make sure that when you're before automating, streamlining the business processes is what's really important. This is where that center of excellence or this central governing place of RPA comes into play, because they will look at it from a point of view that to make sure that, okay, is it actually necessary to automate this? Can we streamline this better? You don't always have to automate a certain process exactly as it is being done right now. You can make changes. You can always tweak it to make it better, make it more efficient, make it more streamlined. So those things have to be looked at. So failure to do such things actually brings the failure to the entire initiative as well. And another thing is ungoverned proliferation of multiple tools. So when you hear RPA, and if you just do a simple Google search, there'll be many, like tens and hundreds of automation tools available, right? And there are free things available as well. So you say, if there are somebody in, let's say, division A, and then there's somebody in division B, and they're all interested in RPA, they both go and take something, take another tool. They take one tool, these people take another tool, and they automate things. Is it the impact, the efficiency gains, all those things still be there, of course, with whatever the tool you use. But the fact that the same organization have multiple tools and nobody knows what's being automated well is the start of the failure, because the cost of these tools, because you're handling multiple tools, it's high, one. And then, of course, there's no reusability when it comes, because you're using multiple different tools. And it can drive up this development and technological and maintenance cost without even knowing. And it actually also narrow down the opportunity as a company for you to learn the depth of a certain tool, because you have multiple tools running with multiple divisions. And because of that same reason is how we come this exclusive ownership of an individual tool. let's say a certain division buys this tool A, and then they feel like, oh, we are the ones who started this. We wanted this. We started with this, and then they have this ownership. They have this feelings of ownership towards these certain tools, and that can actually be a hindrance, because then they don't want to, like, how kids are with their toys. They probably wouldn't want to share their toy with another division, or it'll be like, okay, we took this, we'll automate with this, and we're not sharing with anybody else, because there's no central point of governance to see what's happening. Then this can become a point of failure, which is always why this central point of governance is really important in RPA. And the fifth reason that is surrendering security to this cut and paste evidence. So a lot of RPA tools are advertised as low code or no code tools. That means you can drag and drop, you can cut and paste. It's simple, like it can be easier as a drag and drop to move data from one place to another, right? But when you are applying those drag and drop tools, or when you're applying those segments into your organization, into your automation initiative, you have to really learn and see and understand if the security measures are still in place. Because most likely when you're working in an organization, there are many critical and sensitive business information flowing through most of the business processes. So when you're working with these inbuilt features or inbuilt functions or drag and drop functions, you have to really think from security aspect as well, whether the security that you have, the security that you have to maintain as an organization, is maintained while using these tools as well. And it can't be a secondary thought. It can't be the afterthought of the initiative. It has to come from the beginning of the initiative, from the selection of tool to selection of vendor to selection of business processes that you're trying to automate. All those things have to happen together, because introducing security requirements at the end of the initiative will not go well, because you have already automated so many things and you'll have to just go back and probably do it over sometimes even. And the sixth one is probably one of the most heard of ones, is the misguided belief that it's a maintenance-free operation. So most of the people tend to believe that you automate something and it's one and done. So you automate something and you can say bye to the development team and that's it. But that's not always the case. One thing is, you're working in an evolving world. You're working in a changing world. There's always changes that comes into play. There can be, breakdowns that can happen. But most likely this changes and this maintenance things that would require a certain expert to be available. So it can't be a one and done deal, because there's always a change that comes into play or a routine maintenance that needs to be done. So believing that it's a one and done deal and there is no maintenance fee, or the cost of this would actually be limited to the development and deployment, is also a reason for mismanagement, because then you will not have the budgets allocated. Then of course this will slowly die down without even properly finishing it off. And the last reason is the failure to translate the efficiency gains. Even if you have governance in place, even if you do everything right, if you don't translate the efficiency gains properly, then of course, if you look at from an organization point of view, the management will not be happy. You have to, as a team of initiating RPA initiatives, or as a team who's looking after the RPA initiative, it's really important to understand the efficiency gain, because if you fail to understand the benefits, then you don't understand why it's important to do it. It doesn't always, as I mentioned before, it doesn't always come in terms of financial gains, but it comes in many different ways. It can be an increase in the brand image that you have because of let's say you automate a certain process and it's smooth running now, it's fast, and the end customers of that organizations are really happy, right? So your customer retention is higher now, and this brand perception for that organization have increased. So that is not a direct financial gain. So you don't have numbers per se, but it's still a huge gain as well. So those translating that efficiency correctly is really important when you're managing automation as well. If you actually think, and if you have this governance in place, if you make sure to appreciate these learning curves, you have to appreciate, uh, you, you have to make sure that business processes are streamlined, and you select your vendor properly, select your tool properly, and make sure that security requirements, regulatory requirements, all these things are in place when you start the initiative, and make sure that you plan ahead with maintenance, with support, with the changes that may come in the world. And of course, making sure, all while making sure that the efficiency gains or the benefits that your organization receives are properly calculated. Then, of course, the automation initiatives can easily be successful. Now I talked a lot from a business perspective, from the management perspective, and how these initiatives would be helpful when you're trying to revolutionize your business through RPA. Now let's look at it from a technological perspective, from the future of RPA to an actual examples of RPA at play. So Aravinda, over to you.
Okay, thank you, Masha. I hope I'm audible to you guys. Please bear with me if you hear any background noises. Okay. So in here we have come to RPA. RPA is a subset of automation. So automation has multiple subsets like workflow automation, web automation, and desktop automations as well. As you can see, there are some modern technologies that we hear and experience in our day-to-day life. So hyperautomation and intelligent automation comes when we combine these technologies with automations. The main difference between hyperautomation and intelligent automation is that hyperautomation is more sophisticated automation process with cognitive abilities that allow humans to be included with the process. In a nutshell, intelligent automation is composed of robotic automation, artificial intelligence, and machine learning. Hyperautomation is a discipline, business-driven approach that organizations use to quickly identify, examine, and automate as many business and IT processes as possible. Consequently, intelligent automation is most often used as part of hyperautomation efforts. If I explain some components that are specific to hyperautomation, first we have business process management, or we can call it business process automation aspect. Rather than focusing on a single task like workflow automation, BPM is focusing on end-to-end business processes, which may include multiple workflows and that are designed to achieve an organization goal. Then we have low-code tools, which enables everyone to do simple automations, which the help of low-code tools, with the help of low-code tools, even non-technical users are able to automate their day-to-day tasks. Then we have two interesting components, self-learning bots and process mining. From process mining, we can gather information from systems that can be analyzed further. From this analysis, organizations can discover the current state of their business processes and identify new opportunities for optimization and automations as well. Furthermore, process mining is an integral part of an RPA lifecycle. And self-learning bots will also gather data from the current running bots, and using AI and machine learning tools, bots will increase their accuracy and efficiency real time without human intervention. If I give you example for hyperautomation solution, user can submit a form to the automation system. Using machine learning tools, we can extract it can be a PDF document, We can extract those details from using machine learning models, and we can submit those extracted data to the AI. And after the AI analysis, we can detect are there any anomalies, frauds uh, with the AI analysis. Depend on the AI analysis, we can give a level that if it's beyond 18%, we can submit those data to a manual workflow. So after the workflow completion, we can submit those data to into RPA system. So RPA system can input those data into a third-party level system or any other multiple system as well. Okay. Masha, let's move on to the next slide. Okay. Here we have automation capabilities at ADA. So first we have Axie platform. The Axie platform is an automation platform. Is built on full microservice-oriented architecture with easy to deploy bot solutions. The bots are designed to cope with errors and failures. With these, Axie manages to work with highly complex business scenarios and ensure efficient and accurate results for the end users. When we compare Axie with other solution providers, there are some key points that I would like to highlight. Axie is a cost-effective solution, and there are no additional developer license after we purchase the Axie, which is a great advantage when we compare it with other providers. And with Axie, you can run multiple processes parallelly by assigning multiple automation jobs to a pool of bots, which optimize the resource utilization as well. If you can remember the success stories that slide that was explained by Malsha, most of those numbers were achieved by using this Axie tool. Then, other than Axie, we have UiPath and Microsoft Power Platform capabilities as well. If you have a special requirement to do automation using this platform, we have well-certified engineers and experience in automation process using this platform, including hyperautomation solutions as well. And then next we have, as Malsha explained previously, not every manual process is worth automating. So if you are planning to implement automation or improve the automation solution that are already in your organization, we provide feasibility consultations as well. Okay, Masha, next, go on to the next slide. Okay, thank you. Then here we have example automation solution that we have done using our Axie tool. If I briefly explain the process here, once the process approval workflow is completed, what have to transfer the budget between two AR, which stands for accounts receivables. So this process is triggered when actually receiving an email from process maker, which also a workflow automation tool. Then Axie will extract the necessary detail from the process maker and do the required validations according to the given business logics. So then after the validation, what will do the budget transfer in SAP using desktop automation. After updating the process maker and shared location, what will notify the required users via an email. In here, you can see that Axie manages to integrate multiple systems like process maker, SAP, SharePoint, and Outlook as well. Masha, please move to the next slide. Okay. Here we have a workflow automation solution that we have done using Microsoft Power Platform. If the business users can send invoices to supervisors to review. After the workflow completion, business user will get a notification with the final status. We have implemented this solution using Microsoft Forms, Microsoft Flow, Microsoft Approval, OneDrive, and Power BI tools. Please note that due to confidentiality and privacy-related concern, we are showing some simple examples for you to understand, and that we can share with you from what we have done. Okay. Malsha, move to next slide. Then here we have an example using UiPath automation tool. This automation solution is a pre-scheduled process that developed using your platform. The high-level requirement is to calculate monthly rental for the site and the payees. First, bot will extract the necessary site details from the database and calculate the rental using the business logic. There are some logics to apply. We have to apply separately for site new sites. There are some sites that are in renewal status, and there are some sites are already expired. So depend on those logics and depend on their rental values, we have to calculate their monthly rental using the business logics. Then these details will be updated in the SAP and the database as well. While notifying the business users, we will complete the process. We will notify the users via email. So, Malsha, on to the next slide. Okay. Hope you learned something new from this Podium session. And if you are interested in implementing automations or improve the automation solution that you already have, you can reach us via these communication channels. And if you have any question, you can ask them now.
Thank you guys. Thank you, Malsha and Aravinda, for the insightful session. So like Aravinda mentioned, if you guys have any questions regarding RPA or anything surrounding RPA, floor is open now. You can raise your hand and I can unmute you, or you can put your questions in the chat box as well. Okay, guys, I think everyone is quite clear on the topic. Quite an insightful session today. Thank you, Malsha and Aravinda, once again for taking the time to join us this afternoon. And thank you for everyone for joining the 12th session of the Podium. Stay tuned for more exciting and interesting topics coming soon. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Have a nice day, everyone.
Thank you all for joining.